Hi, Luke here with Solid State Logic, and today we're taking a closer look at the SSL UF1 with Cubase.
UF1 is an incredibly powerful one-fader controller that packs in the same functionality you'd expect from a control surface twice its size, boasting 2 high-resolution displays, a fully motorised fader and all-metal chassis. UF1 brings SSL quality and hands-on control straight to your desktop. With comprehensive command of your DAW, UF1 is equipped with dedicated transport buttons, as well as the ability to control pans, sends, plugins, and even customize 46 soft keys specifically to your workflow. What's more, UF1 allows you to work with up to 3 different DAWs simultaneously and easily switch between them. What really sets UF1 apart is its integration with the SSL Meter plugin. Viewable in all its glory on the impressive 4.3-inch IPS display and completely controllable from the UF1 and the 360 plugin mixer. UF1 can be used on its own as your main DAW controller, or it can be partnered with the UF8 to give you an enhanced SSL control surface experience. It's also the perfect hardware expansion for the UC1 plugin controller, giving you direct access to 360-enabled channel strips and on-screen visual feedback of your EQ curves. When unpacking UF1, you will find a 12-volt DC power supply, 2 stands and an associated screw and hex key to attach them to the UF1. You'll also find a 1.5 meter USB-C type cable and handy C to A adapter should you require it. Flip the UF1 over and choose which set of pre-drilled holes to attach the stands to. Different hole pairs give you different angle options. You can even swap the rubber feet to the opposite end of each stand to allow for a steeper angle. Once your stands are set up, connect the UF1 to your computer via the USB-C port. The USB-A port labelled through is a built-in USB hub that can be used to chain through a UF8 or UC1, or it can be used for dongles. The 2 jack sockets are for connecting foot switches and can be assigned to door commands like play and stop. Now it's time to register our UF1 and download the required software. Registering UF1 allows you to claim your complimentary SSL Meter plugin license, so let's do that first. Go to the SSL website and log into your account, or create one if you need to. Once logged in, go to My Products, then click Register Product, then Register Hardware. Choose SSL UF1 from the drop-down list and fill in the form. The serial number of the UF1 can be found on the base of your unit. Once successfully registered, click on Get Your Additional Software. Then enter your iLok user ID and click Validate. Once validated by the system, click Deposit and then your Meter plugin license will be deposited into your iLok account. Open iLok License Manager and activate your SSL Meter plugin to your computer or iLok. Finally, head back to the SSL website and go to the Downloads page and filter the list to SSL 360. Download and install the SSL Meter plugin and the SSL 360 software itself, which is required for UF1 to function. Once SSL 360 is installed, launch the app. Your UF1 will appear on the home page, alongside any other SSL controllers you may have connected. The first thing you'll need to do is update the UF1 firmware via the Update Firmware button. Do not unplug the unit whilst this is in progress. Once the firmware update has completed, allow a bit of time for UF1 to reappear on screen. To complete the UF1 hardware setup, you can go to the Sleep Settings menu and adjust the amount of inactivity time before the UF1 hardware goes to sleep. Just type in your preferred value into the green text area, or you can turn the sleep off completely if you prefer by disabling the square tick box. One of UF1's special features is its ability to trigger keyboard command sequences from your favourite DAW shortcuts. These are assigned using SSL 360, which we'll cover later. When you first plug in your UF1, macOS should present the Keyboard Setup Assistant window because it wants you to identify which region, Europe, America, or Japan, this as unyet identified keyboard is from. If you connect UF1 to your computer before installing SSL 360, you'll need to close this Setup Assistant and come back to it because SSL 360 needs to be installed on your computer in order to continue through this setup process. Once 360 has been installed, you can make this Setup Assistant reappear again by doing the following. Open up Mac System Preferences. Go to Keyboard and click Change Keyboard Type. When presented with the Identifying your keyboard screen and you are being asked to press the key immediately to the right of the Shift key, go to UF1, press and hold the 360 button, and whilst keeping this pressed, press the Mac Key ID button. This will move you through to the final steps of the process where you can choose your region and click Done. Next, we want to configure UF1 to work with Cubase. To do this, let's open up 360 and navigate to the Control Setup page. In the DAW configuration section, choose Cubase from the drop-down list for DAW1. If you use other DAWs, you can go ahead and choose these for DAWs layer 2 and 3 also, or you can just leave them set to none if you only use one DAW. Now, proceed to the UF1 page and set layer 1 to Cubase. Again, if you're using multiple DAWs, you can set layers 2 and 3 to those DAWs also, or you can choose the 360 plugin mixer. Once you have configured your layers, you can easily switch between them by pressing and holding the 360 button, and whilst keeping this held down, press the desired button from the top row. You'll notice there's nothing much happening on screen yet, and that's because we need to configure an MCU controller inside of Cubase. So, within Cubase, head to Studio, followed by Studio Setup. Now, click on the plus symbol in the top left of the window and select Mackie Control from the drop-down list. Then, set the MIDI input to SSL vMIDI port 1 source and set the MIDI output to SSL vMIDI port 1 destination and click Apply. The amount of SSL vMIDI ports you need to configure depends on the amount of SSL controllers you are using. If you have just got a UF1 or a UF1 and a UF8, then you only need to configure SSL vMIDI port 1, because UF8 and UF1 both communicate on the first port of a given controller layer. Near the bottom of this window, we have the option to enable Auto Select. If this is ticked, then touching the fader cap will select the track in Cubase, instead of having to press the Select key. Some vMIDI port assignment modes require you to select a track before controlling the parameters. Experiment with this option to find your preference, but I personally prefer to disable it. Please note, if you're configuring Cubase on layer 2, the port numbers would start with 5, and on layer 3, they would start with 9. Next, go to Studio, then More Options, and click on Mackie Control, ensuring the small pop-up window that appears has Cubase selected, instead of Compatibility. This is important as UF1 has been designed to work with Steinberg's latest implementation of the Mackie Control protocol and must be in Cubase mode to ensure all features work as expected. As a final step, go to Studio Setup, MIDI Port Setup, and deactivate the All MIDI Inputs option on your SSL vMIDI ports and click OK. This will ensure that MIDI instrument tracks set to receive all MIDI inputs do not pick up MIDI data from the UF1. With our setup complete, UF1 is bounced into action with the track metering, fader dB readout and track name on the small display, and the DAW time readout boldly presented across the large screen. You can switch between SMPTE and bars and beats by pressing the button here. On the bottom of the small display, you'll see the parameter currently assigned to the VPOT, which right now is pan, and I can see its left-right pan from the text presented here in the large display. It's a similar affair in the large display, where across the bottom you can see the first 4 channels of the current controller bank. You can control the pan from these channels in the same way. You can even use the 5 to 8 button to get to channels 5 to 8 in the bank. If I push a VPOT that has input routing configured, it will toggle the orange monitor function on and off on that strip. Down in the fader section we have the solo, cut or mute and select keys along with the super smooth 100mm motorized fader. We've then got the flip key, great for moving parameters such as pan or send onto the fader for precise control and writing automation changes. At the bottom of the strip there is the master button, which in Cubase will lock the fader to the master output channel. Moving along the bottom of the UF1, we come to the primary transport control keys with rewind, fast forward, stop, play and record. Above them, we then have the secondary transport controls. The first 2 keys are the important parameter page left and parameter page right commands in Cubase's MCU control. These are required to navigate through VPOT parameter pages. You will see the page information update on the UF1 screen here to tell me which page I'm on. Let's go back to page 1 for now. Moving along the secondary transport row, we have then loop on and off, click on and off, and then quick key 1, which allows me to toggle the name value function, switching the VPOT assignment between the name of the function and the value readout. We then have quick key 2, which is assigned to the Cubase MCU shift function, but more on that later. The secondary transport keys can be customized within the 360 app as well as the top row of soft keys. There are 10 pages of soft keys that you can customize, and we can cycle through them using the left and right arrow keys here. Let's say we want to change the function of one of the secondary transport keys. For example, let's say we don't have much use for turning the click on or off, but we do use solo defeat all the time. We can simply open 360, then go to the UF1 page, click on the metronome button assignment, choose the DAW command option, and find what we want from the list. So example, if I'd rather have this assigned to solo defeat. Now, when I go back to UF1, you'll see UF1 is clearing the solos for me. Finally, the Shift button repurposes the secondary transport keys to be my automation modes. In Cubase, we have access to read and write automation modes. So let's go ahead and put the channel into automation mode by selecting the channel with the cell key and then pressing the desired automation button. You'll see the automation mode in the mixer window corresponding to the changes made in UF1, ready to record the automation. Moving up from the transport, we come to the cursor keys with the mode key in the centre. When the mode key is lit, the cursor performs horizontal and vertical zooming. Pressing the mode again, bringing it back to an unlit state, up and down arrows now change the selected track in Cubase, and left and right change the selected track. Next to the cursor keys, we then come to the large jog wheel. In Cubase, we can use the jog wheel to scroll through the session. We can also use the jog wheel in scrub mode by engaging the scrub button. When the wheel is moved, the audio will behave in a manner similar to moving a tape playback head, speeding up and slowing down in relation to the speed of the jog wheel. Let's now take a look at using the channel encoder. By default, the channel encoder is used to move your DAW tracks across the UF1 surface in increments of one channel at a time. Pushing the channel encoder brings up a submenu of different modes it can be assigned to. To choose a different option, simply scroll until it's highlighted and then push to confirm. Fader cell mode allows us to move the focus fader within the confines of a bank of controller channels. For example, I have now changed UF1's fader so it is looking at channel 5 in the current controller bank, which you can see in the top area of the display. You may need to use this function to access tracks at the end of the Cubase mixer when the bank of 8 faders UF1 is controlling butts up against the end of the session. Let's change this back to being on the first channel of the bank. Focus mode emulates the scroll function of a mouse. This can be a really nice way of controlling plugins or anything else on screen that responds to a mouse scroll operation. Simply open up a plugin, I've got Blitzer open here, and hover your computer mouse over a control and turn the encoder. Now I can dial in the perfect amount just as if I was using analog hardware by letting my ears set the level instead of the mouse. The final channel encoder mode is volume, allowing me to control the system volume level from the UF1 if the audio device I'm using can be controlled by the operating system's volume up and down. For example, if you're on the road with your headphones plugged into your computer's built-in audio output. When working in Cubase, the UF1 offers direct access to the 8 main VPOT assignment modes. These VPOT assignment modes are accessed via the soft keys labelled Pan, FX Send, EQ, Strip, Plugin, VST Instrument, FX Insert and Master Insert. In this video, we're going to take a look at a couple of the most useful assignment modes Cubase offers and how they work on UF1. If you'd like more information on all of Cubase's MCU features, be sure to check out the Mackie MCU Pro section of Steinberg's Remote Control Devices document, which you can find by going to the Help menu in Cubase, selecting Cubase Help from the drop-down list and scrolling to the Cubase Remote Control Devices PDF. Please also refer to the UF1 user manual for the nomenclature lookup table to see what UF1 labels mean in relation to Cubase Nuendo MCU functions. Let's begin by looking at FX Sends. First, let's select a track we want to work with by scrolling through the channel encoder and arriving on our track and hitting the select key next to the fader. Or if I enabled auto select during setup, I could simply touch the fader instead. This is important as it determines which channel sends I'm affecting. Otherwise, I could end up affecting the wrong channel sends. Now, let's press FX Send soft key. Now I can adjust the send levels from the currently selected channel across the 4 VPOTs. The name of the selected track in which I'm adjusting these sends is displayed here in the UF1 screen. If I want to change the word level to instead show a readout value, I can simply press Quick Key 1 to toggle this like so. Pushing a VPOT will toggle the bypass for all sends on the selected track. Pressing the 5 to 8 button will allow me to access the sends 5 to 8. But let's return to sends 1 to 4. On the UF1 display, I can see page 1 of 4 showing. Using the right parameter page key, I can change the VPOTs from controlling the send levels to instead control individual send bypasses, pre or post states, and finally on page 4, send destination. What we've been looking at so far is controlling all the sends on the selected channel, but there is an alternative way of controlling sends in Cubase, which is referred to as Global Sends mode. To access Global Sends mode, press and hold the MCU Shift key, which is pre-assigned to Quick Key 2, and then hit the FX Send key. Global FX Send mode allows us to control the same send parameter across multiple channels at once. On the UF1 screen, I can see that right now I'm looking at FX Send 1 across all channels, and that I can easily change the level of the FX Send 1 for the first 4 channels of the bank, and with a push bypassing each send individually. I can, of course, press the flip button to control the send level on the fader instead if I like. If I want to access a different send slot, I simply press and hold Quick Key 2 and press FX Send again. Now I'm controlling FX Send 2 across all channels. You can use the page left and right keys to change the VPOTs from controlling level to bypass, pre and post status, routing, and more if you like. When working in Cubase, we can easily utilise the built-in Mix Console EQ on each channel. First, select the track we want to work with, then press the EQ button. Now I can adjust the EQ for this channel with the channel name displayed here. The first control we have is the EQ band's frequency control, and when we start to adjust this, the readout will display the frequency position. If we then click down on this VPOT, the control will change to a Q width control, again with the readout changing to read the Q value. Next we have the gain for the band, which we can adjust like so. We can then also toggle each band on and off by pushing the gain control. The same controls for band 2 could be found on VPOTs 3 and 4, and I can access bands 3 and 4 in the same way by pressing the 5 to 8 key. Let's press the 5 to 8 key again to return to bands 1 and 2. If you prefer to look at the values all the time, I can toggle this with Quick Key 1. Now, Cubase also has an alternative mode for controlling the EQ, and if I go down to the Shift key, which is programmed to Quick Key 2 remember, and hold it whilst pressing the EQ soft key again, you'll notice that the text on the bottom left of the UF1 has changed to EQ. This mode puts gain on the first VPOT and the frequency on the second VPOT and repeats, much like it does in the other EQ mode for the other bands. In this mode, a push on any VPOT bypasses the whole EQ section, and the Q and individual band bypasses can also be accessed from the second parameter page. The strip key allows us to access Cubase's strip parameters on the currently selected track. First, let's engage the strip VPOT mode via the soft key at the top of the controller, where we'll now see the label Chan Strip and the strip name displayed above the VPOTs. The first VPOT allows me to select the type of processor. We can then turn this to choose from Gate, Compressor, EQ, Tools, Saturation, and Limit. For our example, let's turn it back to Gate, and the third VPOT allows me to select the type of processor available, which for the gate allows us to select the noise gate. I can then access the strip parameters across the VPOTs using the page right key. Here, you can see I'm adjusting the gate threshold, like so. And don't forget, the next bank of parameter settings are available if we select the 5 to 8 key, like frequency and Q here. The plugin key allows me to access the insert slots of the currently selected track. So simply go to the second soft key bank and press plugin key. Use the channel encoder to find the track you want and then press the cell key to select it. The name of the track shows up on the UF1's large screen display. The first VPOT will allow you to select the insert slot you want. The second VPOT will then control the bypass on and off for the plugin, and the third VPOT allows you to select the plugin from the list like so. This could be any plugin, whether it's an SSL plugin, Cubase's own, or your own favourite third-party plugin. We can use the page right key to move through the parameter pages and start controlling the plugin like so, remembering to use it in conjunction with the 5 to 8 key for any further parameters that may be present. The VST instrument key allows us to take control of any of the virtual instrument parameters you have in your session. So if I start by selecting the VST instrument soft key, then scroll through my session to an instrument channel and then hit select, we can now see on the large screen display telling me I'm working in instrument mode and the track name of the selected track. I can bypass the virtual instrument via the second VPOT, whilst I can then select the virtual instrument I want from the third VPOT. Using the page right key, I can control the various pages of virtual instrument parameters whilst also remembering I can control the parameters 5 to 8 via the 5 to 8 key here. The FX insert key is great for accessing the first insert slot of any effects channels you have set up, perfect for tweaking reverb or delay parameters quickly. So if I jump in and press the FX insert soft key, regardless of where my channel fader is focused, I can see the FX channel selection on VPOT 1, the on-off toggle on VPOT 2, and the plugin effect insert selector on VPOT 3. I can see via the pages readout I have access to further parameter pages, so using the page key, I can now access the plugin parameters and control them directly from the VPOTs. If necessary, I can also use the 5 to 8 key to access any further parameters that may be present. The master insert mode allows us to take control of the effects plugins on our master output channel. So if we go ahead and select the master insert key, the first VPOT determines which insert slot we're looking at. The second determines whether the insert is bypassed or not, and the third allows us to choose the plugin for the insert slot. We can use the page right key to move through the page parameters and start controlling the plugin like so, remembering to use this in conjunction with the 5 to 8 key for any further parameters that may be present. Don't forget, you can also press the master key to allow the UF1 to control the master fader as well. In soft key banks 9 and 10, we have the fader bank keys labelled 1 to 8, which are used to access Cubase's channel visibility presets and channel types. I currently have a few different setups ready, and each have different tracks visible within each setup, so I can now easily access each group by pressing the corresponding number soft key. For instance, here I have my guitar track set up in fader bank 3, where I can see my AMP1 dynamic mic and AMP1 ribbon mic, as well as the stereo mics I've used for room ambience. I can of course relabel these keys to be less generic than simply saying fader bank 1, 2 or 3 using 360. If I wanted to, I could also reassign them to a lower number soft key bank, if these function are more important to my overall workflow. Now, alternatively, I can filter the tracks by track type. So if I hold down the Shift key on Quick Key 4, this now shows me just my FX tracks, or Shift key 5 shows me my virtual instruments. Then, if I want to see all channels again, I can return to all tracks by selecting fader bank key 1. In Cubase, we have the ability to map commands to the function keys, which on the UF1 are preset to soft key banks 7 and 8. If we head to the Studio tab in Cubase, then Studio Setup, under the Mackie Control tab on the left, we're presented with this menu with keys waiting to be assigned. The unique thing about using the F key shortcuts, rather than presetting in the 360 layer, is we can also set up shifted versions of the F key, giving us 2 possible commands via the soft key bank if we included the Shift key also. So all we need to do is click on a space to assign a function to any of the F key or shifted key assignments. Let's select a category, so I'll pick Add Track, then select the type as Audio, then click Apply, and then OK. Now, if I select F key 1, the UF1 will trigger the Add New Audio Track window. Obviously now we can return to the F key assignment window and add functions for all of these F keys and shifted F keys. You'll also see at the top there are options for user A and user B actions, which we can use the 2 foot switch connections on the rear of the UF1 to action further functions, such as transport start and stop, and transport record, for example. Now, when I'm happy with all the F key assignments, I can go back into 360, and jumping to the soft key banks 7 and 8, we can rename the F keys to mirror the new assignments we've made in Cubase. Once you're done setting up your F keys, you can of course add further custom soft key assignments to any of the soft keys in UF1. Earlier in the video, we reassigned one of the secondary transport keys to a different DAW command. Now, let's take a look at reassigning a soft key to a keyboard shortcut. To do this, let's go into 360, which will take us straight to the Cubase layer. Let's select soft key bank 3, and here I'm going to reassign the key currently assigned to routing. To do this, I click on it and choose Keyboard Macro, and I'm going to type in my shortcut for Split It Cursor, which is Alt-X. I can then label this cut in the short label bar, and this will now be shown in the UF1, which now, if I use the shortcut, will quickly slice audio tracks on the fly. If I was programming a more complex keyboard macro that contained multiple lines, you'll notice there's an option to add a delay time between the commands. This can be useful for more complex sequences, where software windows sometimes take a short time to open. ensuring the command is executed properly at each stage. Any changes you make to softkey assignments are automatically saved in the background for you by 360. But if you wish to save and load different profiles, for example a tracking configuration and a mixing configuration, you can do this via the Save and Load buttons on the left-hand menu. If you wish to reset a DAW profile to its factory ship settings, simply use the Revert button. When using UF1 with Cubase, there are 3 different modes we can choose from. We can toggle the different modes by simply pressing the Mode button, or we can jump straight to the desired mode by pressing and holding the Mode key, and then using the options on the soft keys to jump straight to that mode. The default mode we have is General DAW, which is the mode we've been working in so far. When we change to DAW Faders mode, the VPOTs will now control the fader levels of the first 4 channels of the controller bank. We can access channels 5 to 8 by simply pressing the 5 to 8 button, like so, but let's go back to 1 to 4. The final mode is the SSL Meter mode, allowing direct control of the SSL Meter plugin parameters. We'll cover this in a moment, but let's briefly now explore the UF8 and UF1 combo. The UF1 is a perfect complement to the UF8 control surface. As you can see, both controllers are in perfect sync, and as I select pan on one, the other unit follows. Same for sends. If I like, I can switch the fader on UF1 to control the master fader in Cubase simply by pressing the master button. And then, for even more flexibility, I can have the channel encoders working in different modes. For example, I can put the UF1 into focus mode, which emulates the mouse scroll, great for quick hands-on access of DAW parameters, whilst the channel encoder on UF8 remains in its default channel mode, allowing me to bank the control surface around the session one channel at a time. One of the primary applications of the UF1 is to control the SSL Meter plugin and deliver key information on your mix without cluttering your DAW view. We can access meter mode in 2 different ways. If you are on your DAW layer, then simply toggle to the yellow mode. You can also toggle into the meter mode when UF1 is assigned to the plugin mixer layer, but more on this later. As I insert the SSL Meter plugin onto my mix bus in the DAW, it automatically appears on the UF1 screen. We can toggle through the 3 different views of the meter plugin directly from the UF1 overview, to the analog meters, to the 31-band real-time analyzer. The meter plugin is also mirrored in the SSL 360 plugin mixer sidebar above the bus compressors. Back to UF1. The reset button clears any overloads or max values. Fine puts the VPOTs into a finer resolution for dialing in precise parameter values, and the preset button allows me to quickly load my meter plugin presets directly from the surface. The first VPOT always allows me to select from any of the 8 possible meter plugins that are connected to 360. In the overview screen, on the left, we can see instantaneous peak and RMS levels on the meters, and we can change the scale by cycling through the parameters via the second VPOT, with various linear, non-linear and K-system options. The next VPOT gives us control of the RMS integration time, which can be reset to default by clicking on the VPOT. The meter readout in the centre of the screen gives me a precise text feed to understand the meters, with max and current readouts for both peak and RMS levels. To the right of the screen we have the Lysergiu phase scope, along with stereo balance and phase correlation meters above and below. The 4th VPOT allows me to change the fade rate of the Lysergiu. I can use the page right arrow to get to the peak hold time and to set whether true peak metering is on or off. Moving to the analog view, we're presented with a VU meter readout by default, a trusted metering method for analog balances used in music studios for years. The VU meter display uses 2 needles to give insight to your mix, with the black needle displaying the current level and the red needle the max level. Amongst the parameters for the VU meter, we have the choice of picking between the +4 dBu 0 VU standard or the -2 dBu 0 VU standard. And to the right of that we have the reference level on the 4th VPOT, which allows us an easy way of tweaking the VU's operation to suit your preferred gain staging in the DAW. If you are using a VU meter as a critical part of your hybrid mixing system, then you would set the reference level to match your digital to analog converter's operating level. For example, For a plus 18 dBu system, set the reference to minus 18. Then if you use a signal generator to send a sine wave of 4 dBs higher, i.e. minus 14 dBFS, you'll see the VU readout as 0. Moving to the second parameter page, we have options for the max needle, allowing us to switch it off, give it a 2-second hold, or move it to an infinite max reading. The third VPOT gives us the option to change the VU from monitoring left and right to mid-side, and finally on the fourth VPOT, we can dial in a global delay for the meter plugin, should you need to manually compensate for differing latencies across multiple DAW buses. Finally, moving back to the first page of the soft keys, you can switch from VU to PPM with the second VPOT, PPM being the popular metering reference in broadcast for balancing program material. The final view from the meter plugin is the real-time analyzer, or RTA. This view gives us a 31-band real-time analyzer graphic readout displaying the source material's frequency response between 20 Hz and 20 kHz. Via the second VPOT, we can interrogate each band independently to see real-time level information displayed at the top of the graph, as well as adjusting the scale top and bottom parameters via VPOTs 3 and 4 to narrow down our viewpoints like so. Moving to soft key page 2, we can then add further adjustment to the display, selecting peak hold time, RTA weighting options, and finally RTA averaging from real-time to fast, medium, slow, or infinite settings. The last of which is great for getting an idea of the tonal qualities of your entire mix. On the final parameter page, you can specify the analysis source, which defaults to left and right sum, but can be changed to be left only, right only, mid, or side. UF1 is the perfect hardware extension for the UC1, giving deeper access to the 360-enabled channel strip plugins like Channel Strip 2 and 4KB via the plugin mixer layer in SSL 360. When working in the plugin mixer layer, we can jump between SSL Meter mode and channel strip mode. Meter mode is identical to accessing the meter plugin and its parameters from a DAW layer, so now we're going to focus on channel strip mode. Firstly, let's set the UF1 to control the plugin mixer on layer 3. Next, let's make sure the tick box for UF1 follows selected plugin mixer channel strip instance is on, but let's leave automatically page soft keys to follow last move channel strip in plugin parameter disabled for now. Then, in the control setup page, make sure that the plugin mixer transport is linked to the DAW your channel strips are hosted within. This ensures we get the DAW transport controls on the plugin mixer layer. Now that's set, let's jump across to the plugin mixer page, where we can see all our 360 enabled channel strips we have in our DAW session. I can hide and close the sidebar to view my connected meter plugins and bus compressor instances. I can also hide or show the fader tray section and collapse my meters at the top if I want to manipulate my screen real estate further. If we take a look at the UF1 on the small display above the fader, we can see the track's name on the selected channel strip, along with the inserted channel strip type, bypass key, dB level, and our pan position, controllable via the VPOT below. If we jump over to the large screen on the UF1, we can see the currently selected DAW time display readout in the top centre, and the current DAW host to the left, which we can change directly from the UF1 by clicking on the channel encoder, cycling to another DAW host if we have one, and pushing to confirm. Please note that this section of the tutorial video is DAW agnostic, so don't be concerned that we have Pro Tools on the display here. The functionality from UF1 is similar regardless of DAW. On the opposite side of the display, we see the current soft key bank page, which we can cycle through as you'd expect with the arrow keys. At the bottom of UF1, Quick Key 1 is assigned to solo clear for any DAWs where 360 is not linked to the DAW's own solo and cut system, and Quick Key 2 allows you to put the encoders into fine resolution mode. And finally, in the middle of the large display, we can see the visualization of the EQ curve on the currently selected channel strip. Across the VPOTs below, we have access to the channel strip parameters via paging the soft key banks, and you can see the high and low pass filters, followed by each EQ band's gain, frequency and Q width mapped to the associated VPOTs, along with the soft key toggles for band pass and curve types if available. The real beauty of combining UF1 and UC1 is that certain parameters previously limited to UC1's extended functions menu are now accessible via the first page of UF1 soft keys, making the duo a powerful pair, no more menu diving required. As you can see, we can access the pan, width, mic pre, out trim and compressor mix all across the VPOTs. And we now have access to the plugin fader too, as well as solo and cut. Scrolling through the channels via the encoder on the UF1 will cause the UC1 to follow and vice versa. We can also use the bank buttons to move in blocks of 8 for quickly navigating through our mix. Whilst we're looking at the navigation of the channels in the plugin mixer, it's also worth noting that we can use the cursor keys to quickly navigate the plugin mixer window, with the up and down arrows moving us vertically up and down the channel strip and left and right allowing us to scroll through the mixer window horizontally. A really cool feature is the master mode, which allows UC1 and UF1 to work independently. Pressing master, I can now set UF1 to control a different channel to UC1. This is convenient if we wish to control one channel's EQ whilst working on another's dynamic sections perhaps, or if we wish to leave the UF1 to control the fader of a lead vocal whilst working on other channels with a UC1 surface. A final tip, if you are using UF1 without a UC1, then you may wish to enable automatically page soft keys to follow last moved channel strip parameter, so that UF1 will automatically page its controls to the relevant page of parameters in response to moving a plugin or plugin mixer control. For example, if I move the ratio control on this compressor, then UF1 pages to show me the ratio control on the surface, and I can quickly dive in for hands-on control of it.
We hope you've enjoyed this UF1 tutorial video, and for more information on UF1, head to the SSL website. Or for more information on using UF1 with a different DAW, check out some of our other UF1 videos on the Solid State Logic YouTube page.